Thanks, Stephen.
All right, welcome everyone. Sorry, we were just running a few minutes late. We're going to get started. I'm going to show a short video, and then each speaker is going to introduce themselves, and then you guys could put questions in the Q&A. So let's get started. Short video.
Welcome to today's session, everyone.
We are Premed CC, a student-led organization established in the fall of 2021.
Our goal as an organization was to create an online program for pre-medical students at community colleges and universities, with the hope of guiding the next generation of diverse and inclusive physicians.
And while we advertise our organization as being for community college students, our events are open to anyone.
We realize that finding guidance and mentorship in a pre-med journey can be especially challenging for first-generation pre-med students,
people that lack the financial resources, or just those who do not know people in the medical field.
One of the best parts about our events is that they are virtual, so you can do it from the comfort of your own home.
We typically have events on Fridays from 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and on Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 12:30 Pacific Standard Time.
If you aren't able to attend the event, all of our sessions are uploaded on our YouTube channel.
Many of our sessions will end up with a Q&A with the speakers.
Any questions that you have, you may put it in the Q&A session on Zoom, and our team members will read them and have them answer.
After you have attended our event, you can log into our website and complete the quiz, which will contain questions pertaining to our session today.
If you score 70% or higher on the quiz, you will be awarded a certificate to show that you attended our session today.
If you want to stay connected with the upcoming events or just want to tell your pre-med friends about the Premed CC, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok as @Premed CC.
Alrighty, so we're going to get started, and we'll start with ladies first. So Lauren, you could go first, and then we'll go Austin, Vince, and Daniel.
Okay, hi everybody, and welcome. And then Jobin, do you have any recommendations on how to introduce ourselves?
Just your name, where you went to school, anything exciting or interesting about you. I know that you are, did a PhD, so yeah, just really short introductions, where you're from and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sure thing. So hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lauren. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a first-year med student along with all these good folks. I'm really interested in diabetes epidemiology, queer health, and eye health, and trying to explore those things in the first year in all the free time we don't have. And I'm really enjoying right now, we're doing a neuroscience like mind, brain, and behavior focused block. So intense time. This is a really nice study break. I'm from Southern California, so LA County originally, and kind of grew up between like South LA County and Little Saigon and Westminster. So if anyone's from those areas, hello to you. And then I went to school at Stanford in the Bay Area, and I had a pretty non-traditional path. Wanted to do diabetes epidemiology research. And only when meeting patients who had participated in our research study, a cohort study, did I realize I really want to work with patients who have diabetes long term. So doing grad school before med school is definitely not required. I was just confused and wanted to learn more about diabetes and got to know really wonderful patients who inspired me to be a doctor. So ask me about anything, happy to be in touch. All right, on to you guys.
So my name's Austin. I'm a first-year student here at UCSD, along with Lauren, Vince, and Daniel. I'm actually a San Diego native, so I grew up down here. I went to Cal State San Marcos to get my bachelor's degree. Both before and after that, I went to Miracosta College, which is a community college down here. And I did everything except medicine before I wanted to be a doctor. So I was involved in welding and metal fabrication, automotive, piano, recording arts, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I had no resources to help me get to medicine, which is why I'm so passionate about making sure that now that I am here, I could pay that forward and help the people that are coming up from community college take advantage of the resources that, you know, the UC schools provide free of charge, but people from community colleges don't often get a chance to take advantage of. So please, if you have anything regarding how to get paid for your clinical hours, how to interview better, any resources, free especially, please let those questions rip, because that's my specialty.
Vince?
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Vince. I'm a first-year student at UCSD. I also grew up in San Diego, and I went to community college at Palomar College. It's JC up in North County, San Diego. And then I also went to Cal State San Marcos for my bachelor's degree. I did quite a few things in undergrad, a few jobs unrelated to healthcare. I worked as a scribe for several years. I worked as a medical assistant. I did a little bit of research. And then I took a gap year due to COVID mainly, and worked in biotech for a little bit before I applied and got accepted to UCSD. I have a lot of interests outside of school, and there is enough free time to partake in your activities despite being in school. Not as much as we would like, but yeah. All right, Daniel.
Hey everyone, my name is Daniel. I'm a first year along with Austin, Vince, and Lauren, and I'm from San Diego too, so we went 4 for 4 for this panel, or SoCal, I guess. I'm from Chula Vista, and I went to UCSD for my undergrad. Took a few gap years off, and during that time, did a lot of things, both healthcare related and non-healthcare related. Worked for the census, work security, worked as a phlebotomist before applying to UCSD. And the first time around, I didn't get accepted outright, and I got accepted into the conditional acceptance program. So I took a year to do that. If you have any questions about that, you can go ahead and ask me about that. Did that for a year before I started school this past fall, and got accepted into the Prime Tide program. So I'll be taking a year off between my 3rd and 4th year to do a master's. So if you have any other questions about that, you can definitely ask me. And as kind of Vince and everyone else mentioned, there is time to be a whole person while you're in med school and still do the things that you're passionate about and do the things that helped you get here, whether healthcare related or non-healthcare related. I'm kind of echoing what Vince mentioned. I do a lot of things like not in the non-healthcare related field, as well as a healthcare related field. And those things are really important to me. And it just takes prioritization of school as well as those things. So if you have any other questions about that, feel free to ask. I'm sure we'll get into like more nitty gritty things with the Q&A, but kind of a rough intro.
So you guys are all pretty diverse. And somebody asked this question, what's the most important feature of being a competitive applicant to medical school, having a strong variety of medical experiences such as volunteering, clinical hours, patient care? How do you recommend getting those types while balancing your life with school and work? And I think every single one of you able to accomplish that. And can you share a little bit about your, how each of you were able to do that?
I can probably go first on that one. I think that's definitely a very tough question to answer, just because there is no magic bullet that's going to get you into medical school. And I think the beautiful thing about it is that all of us have something different about us that was a strength on our application. So for me, I took about 6 gap years and I applied to medical school with 15,000 clinical hours. But if you look at my research history, I have no publications. All of my research projects got canceled because of COVID. So on the other hand, you might have an applicant that has 200 hours, but eons and eons of publications and things like that. So if I can summarize, I think would be, when you go through the pre-med process, you take the MCAT, you show your GPA to the schools, they know you can do the academic part of medicine. They know you can show up to your medical school and pass the tests and things like that. What they're looking for beyond that is, are you able to actually be a doctor? And so I think there's not a lot of emphasis put on those other activities that are outside of clinical medicine. And I think those are really, really important as well. So things that are your hobbies and things like that, things that make you social and make you interact with other people. Med schools want to see that. They want to see that you're not just going to be some robot that knows medicine. They want to see you interact with patients, and they want to see that you can interact with other people.
Yeah, I think I'll answer. I think I agree with everything that Austin said. I'll try to answer a different part of one of those questions that was asking about how to balance getting all of those experiences while you're also trying to have your life and school and work and everything together. I think this was something that I kind of naturally had a strength with in undergrad. And I think part of why I did so well with it was that I was okay with the fact that I was probably not going to get my degree in a solid 4 years and then apply my senior year and then go jump straight into medicine and be a med student at 22. I was totally okay with, going to community college. I didn't really have an option but to make it a 3-year journey. The science classes, it just didn't work out for me that way. And then by the time I got to Cal State San Marcos, it was kind of a similar story. A lot of classes were impacted and I ended up going 2.5 years. So my total undergrad time was 5.5 years. And then I applied as soon as I could, didn't get in the first year. And that was more time for me. And a lot of people would take this as a discouraging factor or think that, the older that you get, the less likely you are to get in school. I disagree with that. And I actually am super grateful that I took more time, because it meant a lot to me to mature a little bit and to have a little bit more time to get those experiences under my belt, as well as just to enjoy being young and not having med school over my head when I'm 22, 23 already. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I'm a much different person than I was, 4 years ago or so. I'm 26 now. And it also, I think if it did anything, the greatest thing it did for me was give me a perspective. A year ago, I was working in biotech using my undergrad degree before I got accepted. And I got to tell you, I did not like it. I realized really quickly that medicine is what I really wanted to do. It solidified it for me. I mean, I already knew I would have liked it, but until you start working a 40-hour-a-week job and you have bills and you're struggling a little bit, it's hard to really appreciate that opportunity when you have it. So now that I'm here, I really appreciate it. So to summarize that, take your time and get those experiences. Sometimes you're only going to be able to have a part-time job for a whole semester, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you are able to do more, that's great. But if you got to take an extra year, there's nothing wrong with that. That's kind of medicine is getting more and more competitive. It's just kind of the way that it goes. So take your time. Don't be afraid to take time.
Daniel?
Yeah, so kind of I'll probably echo some things that Austin and Vince said, but a quote that I once heard that kind of stuck with me is that everything that you need to be a good doctor is already in you by the time that you're admitted to med school. Meaning that like all the characters, there's a reason that they accept you. They want you to be like a whole person, rounded out, with like interests and other things like outside of medicine. For me, I wasn't the best student academically because I had to work part-time jobs, often not related to healthcare. And at the same time, I had to do those things that we need, like to get clinical hours, volunteering, working, and academics can get to be overwhelming while you're in undergrad. And so I took some extra time also during my undergrad, even though I went straight through from high school and then took a few gap years after that. I'm 26 as well, and I think that's actually the median age now of medical school students. MS1s, I think, is the median age is 26, and so I think more and more it's becoming the norm to take gap years and to kind of like answer the question is, I would say, lean into your passion, whatever that is. I think a large part of my application was like free clinic and things I did like at immigrant shelters, but also the fact that I like was really into like dance, and I've done that for like years, and I've kept that up through like medical school, because when I actually like got in front of people, that's usually like kind of more what they ask me about. They might ask me a question about like, oh yeah, how was something about my clinical experience, but they're like, oh, how'd you get into like dance and like all that, and that's often a question that I'll like have, and things like not related to medicine, even though that's something I'll have in common. We also, I feel like people appreciate the differences when admitting students. And one other thing that I wanted to echo is that I think you should also you shouldn't use your extracurriculars as checkboxes. You should use them as experiences to see if you actually want to do medicine, because you should think about it that way. I think the best way to think about it is you are using these experiences to figure out if medicine is for you, and you should just assume that if you want to do it, you can do it. And I think that's the best way to approach it, and I think that will kind of lend itself to like just things that, you know, if you try something, you don't like it after a quarter, don't do it, don't keep doing it. And if you find something that you love, but it's not the most like, you think it's not the most like pre-med resume builder thing, I would say still keep doing it if it means a lot to you. And so I'll kind of end with that.
Can you all just share what your age is and what was your college majors? Because we're getting a few of those, and I just wanted to throw that out there.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I'll go first since I was already, I'm 26, and I was a public health major and bio and chem minor.
Yeah, and I'm 28, and I did human biology, and my studies since were in public health and in diabetes epidemiology.
I am 29 years old, and my degree is actually in kinesiology, so like biomechanics and human movement, which is medicine adjacent, I guess.
I am 26, and I majored in bio and minored in chemistry.
Very cool. This is a question for non-traditional reapplicants with multiple different activities. How do you suggest an approach to application? Do you have a theme that tied all your activities together?
I was a reapplicant as well. I don't know how non-traditional I was, but I applied once and didn't get in. I quit all of my prior jobs. I was a scribe, I was a medical assistant, I was doing a few other things, and I quit all those altogether and worked in biotech. And then I really used that to think about my perspective in medicine, which was, do I want to actually go and do this? I was already beaten down once with the application process. Do I want to spend that money and time and do it again? Is it worth it? Am I really in this for the right reasons? And I had to ask myself that question over the next year. And the answer was absolutely. So I completely revised my personal statement. I think that was the biggest thing. Not much changed about my resume other than the fact that I was working in biotech. But the biggest thing was that I just had a renewed appreciation for just the opportunity to even be there. Like my dad is a pipe fitter, and I should be doing exactly what he is, which is waking up before the sun is up every day. And the fact that I'm here and even had the opportunity to apply was huge for me. So I kind of wrote about that. And I think that was a huge step in the right direction for me, recreating my application and reforming my perspective on getting into medical school and appreciating it.
Austin, do you want to share a little bit about your non-traditional, like one of the key factors for you, because you did a lot of other things?
So I think, and I'll be full disclosure, I actually dropped out of college and moved into the workforce for a couple of years, which is also, sort of contributes to my advanced age. But what I think really, and I'm going to go back to what Vince said on this, I think the time that I took before medical school really prepared me for medical school, and it put a lot of things into perspective. As far as like non-traditional pathways, I don't know if there's really a key or anything that helped me get into medicine. I honestly, when I wrote my application, I didn't go with a theme. I had no idea what I was doing when I applied because I didn't have any resources. And so I threw all of my stuff together, but I actually brought my passions into my application. So a little bit about me. My hobby is creative writing. I love storytelling. I love anything involving like writing fiction or telling stories. And so I put that on my application. And so my personal statement wasn't like, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I am blah, 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 because I didn't want it to be the same as everybody else's. So I took one of my experiences and I put it in my my personal statement. And the personal statement essentially started out like, I stood there for 6 hours, trying not to breathe, trying not to move, trying not to touch anything, because 3 feet in front of me, the surgeon held a man's heart in his hands. And it was just like, I felt like that tells so much more of a story than just saying, hi, my name is Austin. I watched a surgery once. I did this. So it was that was at least what I brought into it. That was my approach to writing it. And I think if you look at yourself and you find, I guess that kind of makes it a theme. So I'm rambling at this point, but basically, I don't think there's a proper way to do your application. I think if you make it genuine and make it about yourself and make it authentically you, you're going to be just fine.
There's a couple of questions about clinical experience and clinical shadowing, and I'll let all you guys talk briefly about that, but we did like a 2-hour and 15-minute talk on difference between shadowing and all the things that you could do. There's short certifications that you could do literally in like 4 hours that you could get some sort of experience to things that are a little bit longer. So everybody's going to share, but you guys should watch that video because it's actually pretty insightful. Anyone? Lauren, do you want to talk about some of the clinical experiences that you had?
Yeah, I think I'm on probably the lower side of the amount of clinical experience I had, just because I was working in research before. So kind of the exact opposite of Austin's situation. Because I think you, Austin, you were working in a critical care unit, right? Yeah. Yeah, I've heard some of your stories from those experiences. So yeah, for me, I was working in diabetes research for 5 years, and I applied to med school, I think when I was 5 years out of undergrad. And yeah, my research was mostly like not bench work, not in a lab, but working on the computer and looking at associations between different genetic factors and diabetes and early growth, and kind of looking at the link between a person's early growth and then later risk of diabetes. So like life course epidemiology is the term. And when I was an undergrad, kind of like these folks mentioned, like I didn't have it great academically for those first couple of years. It was a really hard transition for many reasons to college. And my first year, I failed multiple classes. And of course, as you might imagine, one of those was in chemistry. I think organic chemistry, general chemistry. I know a lot of people relate. I see the pain on Austin's face. So I had to retake those later on. And that's okay. Like if you have fails on your transcript, you can make it. Yeah, that said, I think while I was interested in medicine, and I did work a bit in a clinical space, I was working in a Veterans Affairs or VA ophthalmology clinic as an undergrad, still kept a connection with a really wonderful mentor from there. I felt discouraged from going into medicine, partly because of academics, and also just because I didn't have many other like role models that I knew who had gone through the process. It was very intimidating. And yeah, for a lot of other reasons, I was really interested in going into research. So I thought, okay, well, I know a lot of people go into medicine from other careers, so maybe it's something I could revisit later after I have a chance to save up. But I know for sure I want to do diabetes research. So I pursued that. So yeah, after a while, when I was working in this diabetes research group, I met a physician, and she was a pediatric endocrinologist. So worked with kids, young people who had different hormone related disorders, or were like queer kids who were seeking like gender affirmative procedures and hormone treatment. And that experience was really inspiring, and it really made me realize like, oh, this is what interested me about clinical medicine. Like I actually want to do research and see patients long term, and do research that matters to them and that might help them with their health later on, maybe like metabolic related conditions. Yeah, so that's my path. And I didn't have as much clinical experience, but I think the times that I had it were really pivotal to me. And like when I was doing my grad degree, like when I was maybe 24, 25, it was the thing that made me decide, okay, maybe I can do the medicine thing. So yeah, I would say anything that I learned from that was like get clinical experience as much as possible. I know shadowing, it's like unpaid labor, and a lot of us can't afford to do that. So I know Daniel mentioned being a phlebotomist, like getting to work with patients in a paid position is accessible. And also look for mentors at any point in their careers who are later on than you, and seek encouragement from them when you can't see a way forward for yourself in medicine, because a lot of us have doubted our paths.
So this is a question that's coming up, and I just kind of want to address it right away. They're asking, does UCSD, is it more important to do research, clinical, volunteer, all of this different stuff? And the whole point of this, you have this both spectrums that Dr. Wedekind has a PhD and started medical school. And I think people that have minimal research, I think Austin has a lot more clinical experience than research, right? So can you guys so this is kind of like the spectrum of, yes, you have one person that has done a lot of research. And so just share a little bit about your experiences, and also Daniel about your clinical experiences versus research, and which one. Obviously UCSD values them all because they're all four here. So
I think that might be the wrong question to ask, because I don't think there is a correct answer for that. I don't think it's clinical versus research. What I will say is UCSD is extremely interested in social activism and community service. And so I believe you've already heard from Lauren that she worked with a minoritized population. She worked with vulnerable populations. All of my clinical research was at a community hospital, or sorry, all of my clinical experience was at a community hospital serving undocumented or incarcerated individuals. And that's something that UCSD really values, is that commitment to the community.
Also, yeah, Lauren is just fine. I would agree with what Austin said. I think there's no one formula. I think also it's unfortunate how in medicine, I think oftentimes we think, and I think it's probably true, that doing research is kind of like correlated with success in your applications. I don't think that's necessarily true, but I think people feel a need to pursue research opportunities regardless of whether they're interested in them, because it will make them seem like more competitive applicants. I don't think that's true maybe for residency, but that's way down the line, and I think it really depends on the specialty. I would say if you're interested in doing research, do something that is aligned with your values, and with a mentor or mentors that will be like really formative in your path, who will support you in like sharing about your research in different venues like undergrad conferences or like community college conferences and stuff. And not just for like getting publications out of it. Like you learn so much aside from just getting publications. And yeah, like Austin said, like do work with community organizations and just groups and friends that contributes to something greater than just like your academic sphere, if you're moved to do that. And that'll remind you of why you're on this path when the going gets tough.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with both of those things that were said. I think it's good to try research to see if you like it. I think two reasons. I think one, it's important to understand the connection between research and medicine, because a lot of how we practice, right, is based off of research that's been performed and that continues to be performed, especially with new treatments and things like that. Medicine is always evolving, and part of that has to do with research that comes out. Along with that, once again, the patient experience is important, and being able to do medicine, even though technically you're not a doctor yet, and being able to interact with those patients is really important. Kind of speaking a little bit about, I guess, myself, because I think that's one of the things that it's hard to talk about if like you don't have like something concrete to go off of. So a lot of my clinical experience, kind of what Austin was saying, was in immigrant health. I volunteered as an interpreter through the free clinic for like 3 years, then was a floor manager there, then was also an interpreter at Palomar Health, and did a lot of work with asylum seekers. I then got certified as an interpreter and then a phlebotomist. And so a lot of my background was clinical, but then I also did like 6 months of bench work, and I did like 6 months of research in San Isidro, which is like a community like border adjacent, you know, in the US. And so it's all about like building that perspective on medicine, and I think just commitment to, I would say, speaking about threads, one thread I think that connected Is like I said, like underserved medicine, specifically like in undocumented immigrants and refugees. And I would, if I had to kind of summarize like my application in a word, in a sentence or two, that would probably be it. But it all kind of lended itself to, I was able to, if someone asked me why I wanted to go into medicine, I had answers that were built through my experiences and my passion. Yeah, Vince, I don't know if you had anything else to add.
This is a question that a couple people have asked. So this is actually one is like time management. Like, for example, somebody who has a landscaping business and works 30 hours a week and being a full-time student. I'm curious to know how many hours you will work and in certain amounts of classes required, and how do you spread it out? And so can you guys, time management is a big thing. I could tell you from myself is I work full-time as well, and so I can't take more than 2 science courses a quarter. So, and I just have to manage that, and it's going to take me a little bit longer, but I also have to put a roof over my head and food in my stomach. And, and that's a reality for a lot of people, that you have to work. I mean, not a lot of people have the luxury of not working. And so how do you manage that? And then I think, can you guys share a little bit about how did you guys manage having to work and survive?
So I think this one is a fantastic question, and I have a lot to say about it, but I'll try to boil it down to the most specifics. First, there's a lot of free resources out there that will help you apply, get through the application to med school. There's Khan Academy if you're studying for the MCAT, if you're still like that far back. You can use used books from the year before that are cheaper. So I use the exam cracker books to take the MCAT. Beyond that, if you are financially disadvantaged, the AMC does have an actual application where you can apply. They will waive your MCAT fee. They will take $1,000 off the top of your primary applications, and they will cover all of your MD secondary application fees. So it's totally possible. On top of that, if you are specifically applying to UCSD, UCSD does this really cool thing with financial aid where they assess you as you come into UCSD and lock you in for 4 years. So your financial aid does not change. That being said, if you are applying to a public, at least this is for UCSD, public school, you qualify for federal loans. And if you are single, you qualify for CalFresh. So you can get groceries, you can get loans that don't accrue interest until you graduate. And afterwards, depending on your specialty choice, you can qualify for what's called PSLF, or Public Service Loan Forgiveness. So if you work in a certain specialty for 10 years, that takes at least, I think, 30% of Medi-Cal patients, and you're making the minimum down payment on all of your loans, they will completely waive your loans. There's also a couple other programs that are super important. So trust me, there's money out there. Coming from somebody who's super broke, trust me, there's money out there for you.
Anyone else, Vince or Daniel or Lauren?
I read that question and it sounded like that person, I think he said his name was Jose. It sounded like he was asking if they would be able to work like in medical school as well. I'm not sure if that's what they were asking.
No, they're pre-med and they're trying to take all their classes. I think the big challenge is right now, a lot of community colleges and even colleges are saying that students that want to go to medical school, you're supposed to overload on these classes to prove that you could handle a difficult curriculum, versus like if you have to work 30 hours a week, don't take OChem, biochem, physics and calculus all in the same semester. And I think that's what's the gist of the question. How do you manage it?
Okay, I see. Yeah, I did a little bit of both. There were some semesters where I was having a super full load while still working, and then there was some semesters that, like at community college, I was only able to take 9 credits because that's all that I needed, and that was my last year there. So I was working along the way. I don't think the med schools will, the way that things are going now with a lot of people taking more time, I don't think the med schools will necessarily look down upon that. I mean, you have to do what you have to do. And I personally think it makes you a better applicant if you're able to do that. But yeah.
Daniel,
Yeah, kind of echoing what's been said. I had to work pretty much every year except when I was a freshman, and I would basically like echo kind of what Vince was saying in terms of sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. In terms of sometimes you need to work, you know, to put food on the table and pay rent. But I try to set yourself up for success as much as possible. Use Rate My Professor. If there's a professor that you know you shouldn't take, definitely look into who that professor is. Sometimes that means if you're working and doing your extracurriculars and trying to study, unfortunately, the realistic outcome might be that your GPA takes a little bit of a hit, or you don't do as well in a class as you would like. And there is hope if you get, like Lauren was saying, if you fail or you get C's. I had C's during my undergrad. You know, part of the reason was because I worked and did extracurriculars and did things that I was passionate about. And I think that kind of helped. So I think just try as much as possible to set yourself up for success. Same thing Austin was saying, when you're financially burdened, it is difficult, but like there's resources available. Definitely I highlight like the get old books section when studying for the MCAT. That's what I did. I bought like old books and then I like rented a bunch of books from like the library to study for the MCAT. And so you just become really resourceful when you realize, like, you know, if medicine is what you want to do, and if that means that you end up applying and having to reapply or do a post-bac, just make sure that when you do, you kind of make it so by that point you've kind of fine-tuned working and going to classes. So if you can only take 2 classes a quarter, but that means that's like the best calibration for you to be successful, you know, while you're working, and that means it's going to take 6 years. I would say that might be like, you know, what you just have to do to set yourself up for success. Time is going to pass anyway, and so you might as well do, you know, what you're passionate about. And like, if you know medicine is for you, it doesn't matter how much time it's going to take, I guess.
One question is, if you guys could redo your entire pre-med journey and medical school application, what would you do differently and why? Or if you would do exactly the same? And what advice would you give yourself if you know what you know now?
Also another tough question. I think if I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't take as many gap years as I did. I think there is probably a sweet spot there. I think the general consensus, at least from us 4, is gap years are okay. Take your time, because that time, if you're using it efficiently, it still looks good on your application. I think the best thing that I did was I started slow over a longer period of time. So I was taking part-time classes while working full-time. And it took me a lot longer to graduate and finish my undergraduate studies, but I did it. And while I was doing that, I was working part-time at the hospital. So I was racking up clinical hours. And I just want to put it into perspective because I will say it again, I'm 29 years old and I'm looking to not only do a residency after medical school, but also do a fellowship. So I'm going to be taking a lot of extra training on top of that. But in my mind, like Daniel said, the time's going to pass anyways. I'm going to be working as a doctor while I'm doing that training. And here's the thing is, even if it takes me until I'm 45 years old to be completely done, I still have 2 decades that I can practice as an attending physician doing whatever I want to do. So, I mean, there's plenty of time. There's absolutely plenty of time. So I would go back and I would tell myself to not be afraid, not rush, because I am fully aware that pre-meds are completely neurotic, and I'm not taking shots at anybody here because we're still neurotic, all 4 of us. And part of that is becoming, okay with certain things and not coming out of your bachelor's degree and getting into med school at 20 years old or 22 years old. That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, and actually, I just looked up the national average for this year. The people that matriculated year was 27.4 years. So there's a lot of people that are taking gap years, and a lot of people that are older than 27. And yes, I know of students that are under 20 that's starting medical school. So it all depends. I mean, people are different. Anyone else wanted to add to this one? All right. This is another question is how do you deal with rejection and setback, and what have you done to overcome them?
I've dealt with that not just in medical school. With the application process, the first time I applied, I didn't get in anywhere. But I also had a couple bouts of this earlier in my life with other things as well, some personal things, and it's a personal process how you bounce back from it, but ultimately it's a decision that you have to make. You can either learn from it and get better from it and decide to work on your weak points and go forward and do it again, or you can use what is the age-old adage, definition of insanity is trying the same thing twice. So if you don't change your angle, if you don't change anything that you're doing and you expect a different result, things aren't going to go so well. Or you can decide to leave it behind entirely, and that is entirely okay as well. Life is full of a lot of challenges. You're going to have setbacks. It's something with medicine. If you get rejected, it's not the end of the world. You can apply again, and you shouldn't take it personally. There's a ton of people who are extremely qualified to be going to medical school, and for any number of reasons, they may not get accepted. It doesn't really have anything to say about them as a person. I don't think anybody should take it personally. It's a crazy process. I think last year our group had over 8,000 applicants, and they have to choose 140. How they decide to make those choices, I don't understand. But starting with not taking it personally, and then looking at yourself objectively and trying to see how you can improve with any rejection, I would say probably the best place to start.
What about you, Daniel and Lauren?
Um, so kind of similar to Vince, I applied to schools and I didn't get in anywhere my first time around, and I was actually going to go do a post-bac in Chicago, and I got kind of a call from UCSD saying that I was eligible for this program that you can apply to, but that they select you for. And I guess I'll leave with the note of I knew it was going to be a long shot to get accepted, but going through like the grueling application process of, applying to 30 schools, doing 30 secondaries or close to 30 I don't think I did 30 secondaries, but close to 30 secondaries was definitely disappointing. And I had a plan to move forward from that. Like I said, I was applying to postbac, and I had luckily met with a dean of admissions who kind of looked at my application and told me what I kind of already knew in terms of my GPA being a little low. And so I was ready to kind of pick up the pieces and move forward. And yeah, so a couple things is kind of echoing what Vince was saying. Make sure you have a plan to move forward, but also don't count yourself out, and don't self-reject, because sometimes the universe surprises you and you have to put yourself in positions for the universe to surprise you.
Very cool. This is something else that Lauren, did you wanted to answer that? I'm sorry.
No, I think Vince and Danielle did a wonderful job. And I think your stories are really great examples of how also it's important to, like for us in medicine, to kind of share when things don't go our way. Because I think there's, like at my undergrad, there's this phrase called the duck syndrome. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it kind of ties in with like imposter syndrome a bit. But it's the idea that like everybody wants to look chill above the water, but underneath the water, they're paddling really furiously, trying to just keep up. So I think that's pretty pervasive in a lot of medical education settings where everyone wants to kind of show that they've got their things together, that they know the answer, but all of us are just really trying to keep up. And I try to do that myself and be really open with other folks, like in my community and also at med school about, when I am struggling academically, or just about things going on in life. So good reminders. Thanks.
Yeah, I think for this is the whole pre-med culture, but there's a lot of people that I call them keyboard warriors, that they can post things and they are experts at everything, but it's usually the people that actually do it and fail, because failing is part of the process. I just put this quote by Theodore Roosevelt called Man in the Arena, is that you take risks in your life, going for a job, you're going to fail, and that's okay. But it's the person that has actually done it, that has the blood, sweat, and tears, that is actually achieves and resilience. I mean, Daniel was willing to move halfway across the country to do what it was necessary to get to where he wanted to get. So I think that's part of the resilience, is that everybody has their own story and had to overcome challenges. And it's, and it's hard. It's, and you're going to have critics that are going to, say whatever, but it's like, they're not the ones who are doing it. It's you guys are the one to do it. The question is coming about, how do you guys do for your study skills, habits, and what did you guys do in undergraduate to be successful?
I'll jump in on this one. So there's, I don't know if any of you have done a set amount of reading, but right before I started med school, I did a lot of research on how do you study efficiently, how do you manage your time, what are the best resources, should I do this, should I do Anki, should I use third-party resources, should I just attend lectures, should I not? And I gotta say, it's still probably the hardest part of med school for me. I'm still learning every single time about how to study effectively. I learned really early on that Anki did not work for me so well. It was something that everybody raved about, and something that I tried for the MCAT, still didn't work for me then. It's very different from undergrad. In undergrad, I could just study off of the lecture slides alone, and then study the weekend before an exam and walk in and do great. And now I found the best way to go about it is treating it like it's a 40-hour-a-week job. Most weeks actually much more than that. And even then, sometimes it's not enough if you're not doing things the correct way. So for some blocks, I will just focus on a lot of memorizing. For some blocks, I need to conceptualize topics, like a really good contrasting, two blocks that really contrast each other really well is what we are currently in versus which is MBB, mind, brain, and behavior. It's basically neurology. And then just before that, we had musculoskeletal. So musculoskeletal is a very, very visual topic. For a lot of people, that can be very difficult. For a lot of other people, it can be very easy and straightforward. For me, musculoskeletal was straightforward because I was able to look at my body and just place things where they go, and kind of think of things as a system, and innervating what things are, where the nerves are going, where the blood supply is coming from, and you could look at it like a river system. I think treating it conceptually like that was really great. I tried to do that for neurology, and the first 2 weeks, first couple of quizzes did not go well. And I was struggling the hardest I've struggled all year. Probably, I studied, I think in the first 2 weeks, I probably put in 60 hours in a week, those first 2 weeks, just studying. And it wasn't really getting me anywhere. And then I completely turned that around the last couple of weeks and just started doing practice problems, and started trying to not do so much hard reading and traditional studying, and instead looked at some third-party sources and started asking around to classmates. And that has seemed to help a lot. So it's different. It's different from undergrad. And it's different from each block in and of itself. 1 week, things are going great. And then the next week, what you're doing is not working. So it's a constant process.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really constant process. And I think it really depends block to block. Like right now, Vince mentioned that we're going through anatomy as well as like neuroscience, basically. And there's just so many different, like, I guess, components that thread through that, like, and a lot is just memory based. So we have pharmacology, so a bunch of different drugs focused on treating certain disorders that we'll have to memorize. And we have to memorize, what does the drug do? What's the class of the drug? Like, what type of chemical is it, essentially? And what are the adverse effects if you take it? And yeah, so that's just one component. And then there's all these different kind of understandings of different diseases and how those things correlate with anatomy and physiology and stuff. So yeah, Vince mentioned a couple different ways that people study. I'd say, yeah, talk with friends in your classes to find out how they're studying. And it varies from person to person. Some folks are more visual learners. Some folks like listening to things, like hearing a lecture read out loud. Some people just like to read. And I think we have like a decent spread of different ways to digest material. Like oftentimes we have recorded lectures that you can watch. Some people just look at the slides. Some people don't look at lectures at all, but they'll use Anki. So that's like a flashcard app that helps you memorize content. And that's something that a previous classes member had made. And yeah, you just have a mix of different learning styles. So it can change a lot. Reflect on what works for you, and know it can change like from subject to subject, and that it looks different from person to person, I'd say.
Daniel?
I don't have much to add. I'll just probably echo some things that were already said. In terms of it changes from block to block, like person to person, and also your like situation changes. I will like go through time where, you know, I'll just get tired of looking at lecture slides, and one of the cool things about the block that we're in is we get options in terms of like reading the book, looking at the lecture slides. So sometimes if I get tired of listening to lectures, I'll like read the book. And so it just really depends on you and how you learn. And kind of what Vince was saying, I agree with the fact that our two previous blocks contrast a lot. For musculoskeletal, I was like drawing all the muscles in Sharpie on my arms and my legs, and that's the way I learned it. And because I was having like a lot of trouble until I did that, and then it kind of clicked for me. And for neurology, it's, you know, it changes, and it changes at the beginning. And I think that's what was the most jarring is I think the old adage that it's like trying to drink from a fire hose is true. You're never gonna learn every single thing that there is about these blocks, but trying to focus on the most important things and figuring out what that's gonna take for you, I think is the most essential. And you kind of have to be really comfortable being uncomfortable. I think that's kind of a thread that's been said through all our stories is resiliency and comfortability with being uncomfortable, and figuring out kind of what works for you. And that might change personally as well as like based on the content that we have. And so kind of just staying flexible is probably the biggest thing.
Can y'all talk about your letters of recommendation, and how did you guys secure them, and who wrote them? And somebody asked about if did they need to be from your science professors as well.
So I had the question was on letters of recommendation, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the school that I went to, when I was attending there, they didn't really have so much of a pre-med committee at the time. I don't even know if they offered like a committee letter when I graduated. I think they might have just before I graduated, but by the time I was applying, my application was already submitted, and I had already gotten individual letters of recommendation. But I got them just from professors that I spoke to a lot. If I went to office hours with them a lot, and got to know them more than the average professor, then I would just ask them for it. And I thought that was great. I also got quite a few of my letters from physicians that I worked for, whether that was in the ER as a scribe or whether that was as a medical assistant. I think those are both easily acceptable types of letters that you can get.
I think requirements on letters of recommendation can vary from school to school. I know some are really not particular, and just say we accept up to this many. We don't have guidance, we'd love to hear from anybody. I would say just general guidance, look at schools' specific sites and make sure that you're meeting their requirements on recommendation letters, like some, you guys were talking about, require letters from science professors. Some are like 2 science professors and 1 something else. I would say if there's no guidance, or like if you have some wiggle room within the requirements, try to look for people who can tell parts of your story, or who have interesting perspectives on your growth over time and can talk about examples of how you demonstrated really strong interest in a subject. It doesn't have to be like clinical medicine related at all. So I think, let's see, I think I had a music professor write a letter of recommendation for me, and I was really interested in jazz piano. So yeah, it doesn't at all have to be that every mentor can talk about your clinical experiences, but try looking for how your group of recommenders will speak about you in their letters likely. See what the overlap will look like, see if there's like people who can specifically accentuate like parts of your story, and see, that there's not going to be too much repetition. Say like if you have 2 people within the same like lab setting or class setting, maybe you would want to prioritize instead like asking somebody who has seen you in a different setting and could talk about different examples and experiences. I'd say, consider from the admissions person's perspective, like you want to get a more holistic view on somebody's development as a student. Hope that helps.
Daniel?
I would echo kind of what Vince and Lauren said. I think they kind of hit the nail on the head. You want to get letters of rec can be from anyone, supervisors, not mentors, but like people who have like overseen you in some capacity, basically, whether that's like a non-paid volunteer, a boss at work even, but you also just want to make sure you hit the requirements of the school, whether that's science, non-science, whatever, a doctor, that may be. Some schools are really strict, some are not. I would say kind of emphasize what Lauren said in terms of just make sure your letter writers, the ones that you do pick, know you well and can speak to parts of your story that you think will best reflect you and that can speak to kind of your capacity as a person in the greatest detail. I think that's the most important thing. There was also like a letter of rec, like website that will like hold your letters for you. So I forget, the name escapes me at the moment. Jobin, I'm sure you know, but yeah, I forget what it's called, but they will hold your letters for you basically.
It's Interfolio.
Yeah, Interfolio, exactly. And so like you definitely use that if you need to. If you had like a good professor your sophomore year, that you want to like have them write a letter, definitely reach out to them. And something that someone suggested once on a panel that I attended as a is that they would follow up with that professor like on a quarterly or bi-quarterly basis, just so they can kind of update their letter. And so I think that's a good strategy. So don't be discouraged from reaching out to like making that connection and asking early. If you're a freshman or a sophomore, be like, hey, could you be able to like write my letter, and keeping that kind of intact. Or even like as a junior, if you plan to take a gap year, reaching out early and then just keeping that connection.
I think that's such a good and strong point that Daniel brings up. Just the importance of like having and keeping in touch with mentors, not just because it'll serve you in terms of keeping that person's, I guess, potential letter up to date, but also just thinking from the mentor's perspective. And now that I have mentees, I love hearing from them, and I think it can be really lovely to just send an update here and there. It's also an opportunity for them to kind of check in with you and offer any thoughts, any feedback on if you're going through a hard time in your application or life stuff comes up. Yeah, so just a nudge to maybe reach out to mentors and update them on how you're doing every so often.
Yeah, so I got a couple of things in the chat. People are asking about UCSD School of Medicine mission statement, and I would just say it's on their website. It's not some secret that only the medical students know. So I put that on there so for everybody to go check it out for themselves, but every medical school has it. They spend thousands of dollars to come up with these mission statements and marketing and all these different things, but also their values. And every school is different. So just because UCSD is one, but so you don't need to ask the medical students, they will tell you, but this is a question that we could ask the medical students. What is the culture at UCSD School of Medicine? Vince, do you want to?
Yeah, the culture at UCSD is, I like it a lot. I know there's probably people who may not feel the same way, but I love all of my classmates already. Everybody's so willing to help each other, and we all do a lot of things outside of class together. Daniel actually had one of my favorite things of all year. He held a dancing lesson. He teaches salsa, and he taught us salsa and tango, right, Daniel? That was a blast. But
yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. So we have a lot of fun. We also really help each other out. I'm with a big group of people that we all study together. We share notes together, and I invite as many people as I can to it. It's really helpful. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are still feeling like they have to be competitive with one another, but honestly, like, we're all going to be colleagues one day. We're all going to be treating patients, and we're only going to help each other get better if we elevate one another. And that seems to be the general vibe here so far, and I really like it. I try to feed into it as much as possible. The more positivity you put out, the more you're going to get back in return. And yeah, I'm having a blast. The people here are great, professors included. Additionally, I am going to have to leave. It was really great to speak with all of you. Sorry I couldn't finish the last few minutes, but it was nice talking to everybody.
Thanks, Vince. See ya.
See you, Vince.
Yeah, just to go off of what Vince was saying, I have really appreciated my classmates. I think it's a really collaborative environment. I think like the school is really good at choosing students who want to go into medicine and want to be like good team members on a healthcare team. So largely like really positive interactions that I've had with folks, and I've been able, it takes me a while, but I've been able to like start making some deep friendships, and really appreciate my classmates on the whole. And I have a couple examples of like how people can be super collaborative. So Austin and Vince were in my course. It was last term, and it was equity and system science, and it was a discussion group where we did kind of problem-based learning, team-based learning, or TBL, and that's a term you'll hear more often. But I genuinely feel like I could hang out with each person that was in the class and have really wonderful conversations. Like, it was just such a great group of people. And multiple of us have hung out outside of class. So that's been really great. And then also another example is we communicate mostly through Slack, like on a group level among the class. It's 140 people in our class. And we regularly will share study resources that are from previous classes or among our class, or mnemonics that might help out. We also have a memes channel where people who might be stressed out about studying will share memes about how they're stressed and make other people laugh. And people make flashcards for each other and share the files among the classmates. So I found it to be very collaborative. I think Vince is right. In any situation, in any group in academic medicine, you're going to find people who are going to be the gunners, who are going to want to compete with each other and not show, I guess, like vulnerability or that they don't know the answer. But I think that's pretty minimal here. So I'm really thankful for that. And yeah, I think it's a really good community from what I've seen so far.
I would agree with all that. I think it's super cool culture at UC San Diego. I think part of the fact what contributes to that is the fact that it's pass, no pass for the first 2 years, the preclinical years, as they call them. And I think that's very important because I couldn't imagine like having to worry about grades again, you know, with like the top 5% of people. Because everyone's just so smart and like, but also so friendly. But I think having that pass, no pass and that pressure off like allows for a culture of collaboration. And like Vince and Lauren was saying, like people will share notes. I'm able to do things I'm passionate about, like dance and teach and share that with my classmates. And I think in ways that I wouldn't be able to, or I would feel less, I would feel more pressure to do less of that and more studying if it was graded. And at the end of the day, I'm still going to learn the medicine. I'm still going to have to like, you know, pass the boards, and I'm still going to have to like see patients, and I'm still seeking out, you know, opportunities and making sure I learn it for my patients. But I think the pass, no pass system just allows for not only like collaboration because you're not really competing against each other. You're working with each other, but also time to take care of yourself. Because I think, and there's people that do, if you wanted to, I think you could study all day, every day, probably for your whole life, not even just for medical school, and to try to learn about like medicine, and still not know everything. And so I think having it be pass, no pass, was one of the reasons actually UCSD was one of my top choices and contributed to it for sure. And I think more and more schools are leaning towards that pass, no pass system in the preclinical years.
Yeah, I think 99.1% of medical schools are pass, no pass the first 2 years. And after that, they're pass, fail, honors. So the other question is people asking, how is it interacting with your professors and physicians? Is it pretty easy? Are they accessible, or are they, are they not as accessible? Do you feel like it's a struggle to connect with them?
I think it's pretty accessible to connect with a lot of faculty members. One thing I mentioned in the chat in response to someone's question was that we have really wonderful academic support staff. So people who have like doctorates in education or neuroscience, who will hold office hours based on Zoom a lot of the time or in an auditorium, to help underscore the most important things in the course up to that point. So like we'll have weekly reviews sometimes. And yeah, the people who run that are really wonderful. So for example, I was saying that today I went to 2 reviews. One was anatomy focused, that was going over some answers to some practice quizzes, and it was super helpful by a really wonderful instructor who helps us in the anatomy labs. And then for our neuroscience course, we had a week 4 review, and I just went to that as well. And both were on Zoom, both had a few students, and those are all posted with slides and some notes. And oftentimes people in our class will take notes based on those reviews, or like condensing down a bunch of stuff from the course overall, and share that with everybody. So that's been really wonderful. And then as for reaching out to like potential faculty mentors, I know a lot of folks have been considering, doing research after the first year of med school. A lot of people do consider that. Some people take the whole summer off and do their own thing. Some people work at our free clinics. Just depends on case by case. But people who have been interested in doing research or clinical work after that first year have started reaching out to mentors. And for the most part, I've heard like pretty good things, that mentors have been like, that faculty members have been like really receptive and open to talking with students. And then for me, in my experience, I'm part of the Global Health Academic Concentration. If you have any questions, feel free to email me about that. But in short, I got in contact with a professor who runs a longitudinal study with collaborators who are based full-time in Chile. And through the Global Health Academic Program, I'm going to be working between San Diego and with those collaborators to research kind of similar to my graduate work, like early growth and then later on diabetes-related outcomes in the cohort study, and then work with some follow-up exams for study participants. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, long story short, I think faculty members have been pretty wonderful here from my experience.
The other question people are asking, oh, sorry, Daniel, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna echo that and say that basically, like, I would say professors here are much more accessible than they were during undergrad. People will like go out of their way to host office hours. If a bunch of students email, like we've had multiple instances of course directors, like basically creating a new office hours, like because students said that the previous ones weren't accessible. So it's just that type of flexibility with our directors that I've really appreciated, and I've felt for them like generally that my voice as a student carries like more weight as a medical student than it did as a undergrad. So that's just been my experience, and it's been pretty refreshing.
The other question somebody asked, so we're getting a lot of MCAT questions, and I think MCAT is something that everybody has done it differently. We have about 3.5 hours worth of MCAT prep from somebody who actually tutors and writes MCAT books. So, but do you guys want to touch on any of your MCAT journeys or horrors or nightmares or?
I was pretty fortunate in that someone who was from my undergrad class was also applying and taking the MCAT at the same time as me. And so I had a really, really wonderful study buddy and application review buddy to go through that process. I will say, like, people won't like put this online, but there are ways to share study resources from AAMC or other things like UWorld. And I won't go further than to say that, but you can share stuff with friends, and it definitely helps ease the financial burden. Those things can be really expensive. I know also what was put in the chat was about the fee assistance program. I think that makes the AAMC bundle pack free for people who qualify for that. So that's something to consider if you're low income or first gen or both. And also, I would ask folks who have taken the MCAT and applied to med school and had successful experiences with that. I would ask them what they use to study, and see if your learning styles are similar, and kind of reflect on, what you might want to use from that. So hope those are helpful.
Daniel, do you want to share some of your wondrous journeys with the MCAT?
Sure. The MCAT is a beast. Definitely make a plan. Definitely find what works for you. What I did is I took the MCAT after I graduated, and I moved back home in with my parents. That's not an option for everyone, and I realized that. But luckily, I had the ability to go back and study full time. And I wasn't really paying rent or food during that time, which was great. And I just got to focus on studying. And so even though I was studying for the MCAT, it was actually one of the best times because I got to just focus on studying and study the way I wanted to. I'm a night owl. And so my schedule, I think, looks a lot different than other people's. I would wake up late, go to the public exercise, eat a big breakfast, and go to the public library and study pretty much almost like until they close, so I would wake up like super late at like 10 a.m., study till like 7 or 8, obviously with bathroom breaks and little breaks and things like that. And then I would go home, eat dinner, sometimes study a bit, and sometimes take the rest of the night off. And I would do that for like six days a week for about 3 months. And I think that's usually about the minimum that people suggest. If you're some people don't have that luxury and have to take school or work while they're studying the MCAT, and just take that into consideration. If you can only like commit half the time, it might take half the time per day. It might take double the time in months. So it might take you 6 months to study if you can only do 4 hours a day. And so just keep that in mind in terms of planning.
The other question is, any feedback, input that you did for your secondaries, and if you want to share that with the group.
And also, I would use this moment just to address someone's question. They asked when we submitted our primary applications, right when it opened or later. I would recommend trying as hard as you can to get your application in as soon as possible. I know a lot of folks, especially like those of us who didn't really have many other people in our lives who had applied to medical school before. It's not intuitive, but like the timing really can influence the outcome of your application, I think, and how early you're offered an interview slot. So just know it's good to get your application in as soon as possible. I think I got my primary application in June, like mid-June or so. And that eased the burden a lot when I was kind of waiting on interview invites. I didn't have to wait as long as one of my good friends who had applied maybe a few weeks later. So that really does make a difference in at least like the time you have to wait before you're offered interview slots, I think. And across the board, a lot of people recommend applying earlier is better. But I know life can get in the way, final exams, work, it's stressful. So try planning ahead as much as you can. As for secondaries, what really helped me was having like a standard set of essays of different lengths that I could kind of adapt to address different schools, different questions. A lot of them address similar things, like how do you contribute to the diversity of our class? What are things that I guess make you like, what are things that interest you outside of medicine? Talk more about some clinical experience, talk more about what makes you a good fit for our school specifically. That last one, I think, is going to be harder to just have a standard thing and adapt it to different schools. I think it's really important to, like with those questions, especially look up the school's mission statement, look up how they make investments. I think like if a school claims to really support diversity and inclusion, does it support like pathway programs for, say, like marginalized people, first generation and low income people to get mentorship on the way to getting ready to apply for medical school? I know UCSD does that and really states, we really value diversity. So see how the school puts its money where its mouth is, and yeah, see how you can speak to different aspects that they highlight in your applications. And that said, like what goes into this process is making sure you have a list of schools that you're passionate about, that you could see yourself actually going to, and that'll save you funds because you're not applying to places that you couldn't see yourself at. And also that'll like require that you're looking up specific things about the schools and their mission statements, what they're about.
Daniel?
I would say kind of similar to what Lauren said, having kind of a list of your essays, maybe like on one Google Doc or something, because it does, after you reach kind of a certain threshold of schools applying, like some questions do get repetitive, like the what do you do outside of medicine question, the diversity question, the talk about the difficult time where you had to like deal with a difficult person question. Those come up a lot. So just having like the fact, those answers ready that you've given like some thought to, and having that ready, and just maybe like, obviously changing it a bit, but doing that, as well as like getting organized, making like an Excel sheet of schools that you have applied when if, so that way you're aware of what schools have which deadline, when they open, when certain things close. That way you can kind of get a sense of when that time is. I would agree with what Lauren said. Get your app in as as early as possible. Stay on top of it, don't get behind, because then you'll just get like bunches of secondaries. And so sometimes it's hard to keep track of, and staying organized and doing it as early as possible can really like help to alleviate and kind of front load that. So you're kind of coasting through secondaries. Those are my biggest pieces of advice.
Yeah, I could tell you that I have sat through 24 deans of admissions talking, and they said applying early and getting your secondaries in early does really benefit you. They don't have statistics for it, but there is this famous quote that says early bird gets the worm, So, and applying to medical school is not just something you wake up and you do. You prepare for it. You've taken all your prereqs and MCAT, and so it shouldn't be like a last minute thing. So you should prepare it. And can you guys just share how early you started preparing for your application?
I applied in 2021 in the summer. I think I submitted my primary application mid-June, and I started setting up the documents. Like I had a Google Doc too, and a school list that was just in an Excel doc form, just like tabulating like kind of things in columns that really mattered to me about each school. Like what's the grading system? What's the I guess what are like different like tuition, where is the school? And yeah, I was just rating them in different ways, like for criteria that mattered to me. Yeah, so I set up those documents sometime in maybe like the late winter, early spring, maybe like February or so. But yeah, the tough thing was I was studying for the MCAT at the same time. So it's just such a busy time. And I appreciate that. So if it helps, maybe try setting up those documents, even if just roughly a bit beforehand, so you're not in a time crunch as much with every single step along the way. And yeah, I would underscore that applying early really does make a difference. And I can't quantify it for you, but I've heard that all around.
Alrighty, I think we got almost all the questions answered, and